G'day YouTube, my name's Lance. Welcome to Bundy Bear's Shed. Well, today we're doing a little clip on the Ferguson TE20 starter switch. Now, under the battery on your TE20, you'll probably see a little switch like this. You'll see it from that angle. And with that little switch, it's your left-hand steering arm comes down. When you're looking at it, if you're looking from the same direction as the camera, the left-hand steering arm's here and your battery box is above here. Now sometimes these screws get a bit rusty because of the battery box. That's okay. Actually, you were seeing it this way. Look, it's normally a 1/2 inch spanner undoes them and a little flat screwdriver on the top, and these other where your battery leads go on, that's a different story. We've brought in a little Ferguson TE20, a 1948 one that we're restoring, and we've filmed the pulling out of the switch, just a few pointers on what to look for over there. But look, now we'll work through what to look at once you have this out, or if you decide to pull this apart on the tractor, which it is possible to do. Now, on the tractor, when you undo the top off it, the pointy side here always goes to the left hand side, and when you pull the top off it, you'll see this fellow in here. Now on that there, can you see the burnt mark there? That's where the starter's been arcing. So whether this one was working or not, we don't know, we haven't looked. And then on the top there, you'll notice it's been arcing across to this side too. So we'll just go through what you can do there. You can buy brand new ones, and this brand new one, this is a Bearco part number B3794, and look, they're a lovely thing. They've finished very nicely, and this one has even been through the flood. It was in some stock that got flooded on us in the 2013 flood that came through Bundaberg in Queensland, and so it's been under the flood and it's still looking nice and presentable, so it's a good copy. You'll notice it may be easy to see on this one that these holes are elongated. When you sit it back down into the tractor once your job's done and you pull the lever forward, you can actually move this back and forth just the amount of these holes here, just to give yourself a better feel on the gear stick lever and make sure it's engaging properly. So we'll zoom in on the bench here and we'll go through pulling one apart and just what to look for. On this clip we're actually showing what can go wrong with this switch here. Now on your TE20, TE20, that's your start switch, and when you move the gear stick lever up and forward, it actually activates that switch, and over time that can break and lose contact. So on your TE20 tractor, it's in front of your steering box. There's your left hand steering arm. I'll try and focus that a bit for you. That's where it is. Now when we come around the front of the tractor, we've got this one apart so we can show you, and it's a tractor we look like we're doing up over the time, so we're going to just do little bits and pieces as we go. If I zoom right in there, what you can see on the top of your screen is this is the top of the bell housing of your tractor up here. This is where your clutch is. So this lever here, it actually sits under that switch. There's a little pivot, and I'll just come around the back and move the lever so you can see. And when you pull it up into the start position, this lever pulls back on the rod here, pulls back and engages that switch. So if you have one of these and all of a sudden the gear lever has gone very loose and nothing's happening up here, you can see this little pivot pin here. I have had them fall out. So look, we'll pull this out, we'll show you how to get it out, and we have one over on the bench we'll pull apart. We may be able to show you a couple of shortcuts to save you buying one. Now, there's a couple of ways of attacking this job, like I've said, and I've just loosened this nut off to get the piece out, but there's another thing that may be worth having a look at. And if you look at the cover on the top here, there's 3 screws that a flat blade screwdriver will undo. And look, I haven't mentioned, but we presume you've got all the battery leads off. Take your battery leads off before starting this job. Take them off at the battery and go from there. I'll just pop these screws out. I probably should have undone these before I undid the other, but that's okay. You just have to look at the back of my hand for a moment. I'll try and keep it out of the way. Okay, now, another option is to pop this top off here. Now that's a Bakelite top housing, so you want to be a bit careful. And the reason I probably should have undone it earlier is because it can pop off and break. So one thing you can do here is pop the top off, holding this down. When you bring it over into start, make sure it works. Is that coming up? It is. Look at that. I'll go around the other side so you can have a good look without my dial there. And that looks good. You can slide that out. And over on the bench we'll talk about how all this works. But for the moment, to get this out, we're just going to presume that we never pulled that apart just yet. We'll undo this screw, slide out the pin, and look, I thought the others I've had didn't have a bolt in there. I'd say someone's fitted that, but I often get in with pointy pliers and undo that little clip. But look, it does drop down, and when it drops down, it just sits on top of the throw out fork. I'll take you around here. So it just sits on the throw out fork here. So it's not hard to pop your fingers down and pick him back up to do what you need to do. It can't drop away, never to be seen again. So look, we'll go over to the bench. We'll talk about the switch and how it works. Okay. As I might point out, when you pull it out, you can just pull the top off here in the tractor. And when you do, there's a couple of things you need to look for in doing that. Now, this is a brand new one. There should be spring tension when this top comes off. And you can see that. There's a little bit of spring tension there. There's not a lot, but that's a good sign. And the reason that's a good sign is... Come on, man. Some blokes are slow, aren't they? There's a spring there. Now that's a rusty old spring from being through the flood, but in the one we pulled off earlier, that's the spring. And what does the spring do? Well, the spring pushes this copper plate, where that sits up there and comes back down. The lever, I'll take the gasket away. The lever pushes under here, and this returns it. So this is quite ratty inside from being in the flood. And on the one that we pulled off our 48, the spring sits in the middle here, and when the plate gets pushed up to start the tractor, the plate comes up. There's a spring on the bottom here too. The plate comes up and pushes this copper disc against these two copper terminals here, and that puts a supply through to your starter motor, straight through to your Bendix starter. So that's a handy thing to look for with that, is make sure when the top comes off there's a spring there. But as I say, this one went through the flood, and we don't know what was in that flood water, but boy was it some wild gear. And everything's gone off colour tremendously, so poor thing. But so yeah, when you pull the top off, you looked at the springs there, that it's in good order. That's a broken spring, there's no way that's going to work full time. So be aware of the spring. I may move over to the old one, as that other one's quite damaged from the flood, so it'll be more of a real life what you see. Now there's a cork gasket here. If you damage that gasket at all, make sure you cut a little one, it's only thin stuff, or put a bit of Loctite 515 around there. That's important so moisture doesn't get in here. Then when you see this section here, pull that out, there's another cork around here. Now that cork around the bottom there, it seals the bottom hole, and if you have a bit of a leak in your transmission or water in your transmission or something like that, that cork stops it from getting in there and becoming a nuisance. So with that housing, all you really look for is any wear in these holes here. They're looking great. I'll probably bead blast this little housing up and use it again. Our business is selling aftermarket parts, but when I do a tractor up, I do try and restore everything to as close as I can to spec. Now with this mark here, we'll probably try and polish that out and make sure that when we put it back in, we put it back in so that there's a nice clean section here against these copper pads there. So when it goes up there and touches, we've got a nice surface, and that one's out of the way. So I probably will polish this a little bit with a little bit of wet and dry paper, and just to give it a nice new surface. But you can see where there's been a mark here, there's a mark there, and there's a mark there where it's been contacting, and it's been arcing a little bit, which that's fine, that's doing its job. Now these little fellas here on this Bakelite top, the battery terminals go to these two wires here, so we can take them out of the way. Oh, that's a bit tight. And this crook one, we can undo that. And look, they don't have to be overly tight. This is a Bakelite housing, it can crack. So if we undo the nut on there, I went and got a little pair of multis, and there's a little rubber seal, a little rubber O-ring under here, and that holds that on. So we can undo this. And the reason you have to undo it like that is that the rubber section of that washer, it seals onto the thread. Then the thread comes out. So that there, we can tidy that up. Now the idea is to take as little off there as you possibly can, because as this sits into the housing there, for this copper washer to seal properly, these must stick above the surrounding Bakelite there. So whatever we do to this, we must keep those pads above the surrounding area. Now if you clean it up and it does go a little bit below, there's nothing wrong with cutting a very small shim, a little spacer front of the foot there. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It'll be an acceptable practice. But and this one here we're not going to touch. We just might polish that by hand, and we'll tidy him up. And so there's not a lot to it really, is there? But I'll go and I might bead blast this housing, tidy that up, and we'll come back and have an assembly. Well, look at that. I've been away and bead blasted it. It's come up beautifully. I do notice there's a grind mark here and there's a little grind mark there, and that must be where someone had trouble getting it off one time. And like I say, instead of having that that bolt in there, it would have originally had a pin. So I'd say someone's had trouble, but that's not going to affect this at all. So now we've got that done, what do we look at doing? So first up, if that little piece of cork is good, put it back, and it just sits nicely in the bottom there. Now on this contact, that's okay, looks nice and clean down the bottom. I get a bit of wet and dry and we just polish any rubbish off the outer surfaces. Now if you remember, when it was in the tractor you were looking at that side, that was at the front, and you're looking at the point here. So we know that we've turned this in the correct direction. If we put the worn bit here, slide him down in there nicely. If we put the worn bit down there, well, we know that when the top here comes on, the points are on the side. So we have a new surface for both sides. The gasket that I had on it was a cork one, it's no good anymore. I'm not going to use this thick gasket, I'm just going to use a little bit of Loctite 515 as a gasket here. It's really good stuff. Bearco brings out a product, an interesting point is Bearco brings out a product the same as Loctite 515, and it works exactly the same. We've used it in the workshop for quite a few years now, and we can actually sell that to our customers now for cheaper than we could buy the proper Loctite product. And in the way it works, I can honestly see no difference. So if there's a Bearco agent near you, I might put them on my eBay store, on Queensland Tractor Spares eBay store in Australia here, but there's a Bearco store in America. But yeah, R51, and it's a great thing. So now we've done that, there's not much more we can do to that. We just put him aside. Now this little fella here, all I'm going to do there is on a flat surface, we'll try and polish him up. We know it's working, we can see a little bit of colour coming off there. So we don't want to take too much, but we want to give it a nice new surface. And look, that's all we need to do. Even though there's still a slight low patch in here, yeah, you can see that I believe on the camera. There's a slight low patch, we've got a high patch this side, and we've got high patches all around there, so that's no problem at all. When we put that in this top cover here, that will seal up nicely. So I'll go and tidy this up, and we'll be back shortly. Well look, while I went and cleaned up the other piece, I actually forgot to mention I have put a drop of oil on here and a drop of oil between those two, just so it's nice and free where that moves there. So just a drop, that's all you need. You don't have to overdo it. And there's also, it'd probably pay me to point out, there's a tiny little washer there, and the washer is there just for the spring to sit on, so it's not sitting on the rubber. So I went away, I cleaned this up, cleaned the top cover, give it a little bit of a bead blast. I need to just polish up this terminal in here so we can we're just looking to have a nice clean contact here. And look, that looks good enough. We'll bring you over this way a little bit, where I can, a little bit more in arm's reach. Now this bolt that we've just cleaned up, it just goes back in there. The little seal. Now what I do with that sometimes is just get a tiny smear of the Loctite and where it goes down there, we just put a little bit there, and as the bolt screws down again, it'll just seal the threads up because we've upset them, which you may or may not need to do that. I'm a bit fussy with all this stuff. I like to fiddle along, do it to the best of my ability, so then we should be able to just nip that up. Okay, so the O-ring, the washers come off the O-ring, but they're not supposed to stay together anyway, so that's okay. So now we just need to tidy both these nuts and washers up and bolt them on. So we'll do one of them. Put that washer down there. And bring the nut down over top. You can see one nut was sandblasted, but I'd find that difficult to sandblast this one, so that can't go anywhere. We nip that up. Now, don't over tighten that, there's just no need. This one here, we'll just make sure it's tight, and yes it is. Yes it is. Because you can bugger that up just by being big fisted. So now before we try and put the top on, we feel across here. This is the one we polished in the housing. That's still, you can feel a lip there. You can feel that. This one here, even though we've polished it, there's still a good lip there. So all we need to do now is get a little bit of Loctite, and we just put a little thin smear. All we're looking to do is seal it up from the moisture. Don't wipe that on your pants. Not if your wife's looking anyway. You do that later. When they're not here you can do what you like, yeah. I'll get you all into trouble yet. So you can feel the spring tension there. That's what we're looking for. That's the side you look at in the tractor. I actually stuck the screws in the holes when I sandblasted the housing, just so the heads of the screws got done. I didn't have to try and hold on to them with the big gloves that we use. So try and do this evenly. And what do we look at now? Well, at this stage we look that we've got Loctite coming out of the gap all the way around, so we know that we're sealed. The jaws on that screwdriver are just a little bit big for these screws, or the width of the blade. So we tighten these down firm. Once again, don't get too big fisted. We wipe all the excess Loctite off while it's nice and free. Don't use those rubbery silicone products, they're just rubbish. And look, that's the job done. What we look for now is that we can press that up, no worries. You can hear it contacting inside. I'm confident that'll work like a beauty. So to put it back on the tractor, you just, the same as the clip we did on the undoing it, and you have a little bit of adjustment back and forth until the gear stick just feels how you like it. But that's it. Well, that's it. That's the restored starter switch for the Bendix drive type starters on the Ferguson TE20s, and you can hear it working okay. To put it back in the tractor, there's a clip at the front of this on how to get it out of the tractor. You just reverse that, you lift that little linkage up, put the pin through, with the pin in, sit this fella down, do your bolts up and just move it to where you like. Put the bolts loose or barely firm, push your starter and lift your gear stick, pull your starter forward, see what it feels like. If you don't think it's travelling very far, you can move this further away so it feels like it engages further. But that's just a personal thing. It's just a bit of adjustment they put there to make sure it went right in. So look, have a go. The idea of doing these clips is to encourage people to have a go. The people that want to restore tractors like I do and drive around at a grand parade with a big grin. We do it for one reason. The people that have a little block of land and a little tractor they love, they do it for another reason. And there's people on a budget that do it to save money because that's what they like to do. And you can buy these aftermarket ones. There's nothing wrong with them. They're better than that because that went through the flood, poor thing. And the aftermarket ones are as good as anything. There's nothing wrong with them. We sell many of them. Rarely do we ever have a failure. If we do, we just replace it. But look, I can't remember a failure actually. But the aftermarket ones are good too. So it's your choice. But I do encourage you to have a go. What have you got to lose? You've got to pull the old one out anyway to fix it. But you can leave all that bottom piece in the tractor and just pull the top out and clean the points and clean the centre piece. That's certainly an option. And yeah, look, just have a crack at it. Alright, look, thanks for watching. We do these videos to encourage people to have a go. Look, jump on. If you like what you see on the channel, please subscribe. Hit the like button if you like the video. If you didn't like it, don't hit the don't like one. No, that's against the rules. But please subscribe and comment down the bottom. It's great to have comments on whether we could help you or whether we couldn't, or if you have a question, if I haven't covered something, ask a question. I do check all my messages every day or so, so I won't be far away before you get a message. So look, thanks for watching. We'll catch you later, eh?